Welcome to another video in the series where we show you how to make your own Discord bot. In this episode, I'll be showing you how you can create a database, connect to it, save information and read information from that database. Now, the database we're going to be using is going to be MongoDB. MongoDB is a pretty easy database to use compared to MySQL and databases like that. Now, I'm not saying this is good for like large scale applications, but for a little Discord bot, it's pretty good. Now, when you get onto the mongodb.com website, you have to create an account before you get to this page. So pause the video, create an account, and then you can get back to me. When you've done that, you're going to be taken to this page. Now on this page, we're going to be hitting the build a cluster. The cluster is basically just a collection of all our databases or it's basically the database. So yeah, hit build a cluster. Now here you can choose what plan you want. I'm going to be choosing the free one, and the free one is good enough for a Discord bot, so you don't need any of this. But if you're going for a larger scale Discord bot, I recommend you go for one of these. Now hit the free one. Now on this page, you're going to be seeing on the top here, you're going to see the Amazon, Google Cloud or Azure. Now I'm going to be sticking to Amazon. Now on the page right here, you should see countries or regions where the database is located. Now you should see Ireland, Germany, Singapore, Mumbai, England, no, not England, but India, and then the US and Australia right here. Now it doesn't really matter, but you can choose, you should choose the one that's closest to your host or where you are, so you get faster speed. So for me it's Germany, so I'm going to be picking that. Now down here you see some options you can change, but of course that costs money, so I'm not going to do that. Now when you've done that, just hit create cluster. Now it takes some time to load, but when that's done, we should see this page. Now it takes up to 1 to 3 minutes to get a database created, so I'll just get back to you then. Okay, now you see our cluster has been created and we're now going to be connecting to it. So hit the connect button. Now your page is going to be looking something like this actually. Now you would need to put in an IP address. On that you are going to be choosing the allow access from anywhere. It's going to be something up here because it's basically at the start going to be only allowing your IP address. So if you're using a host, you want to allow IP addresses from anywhere. Now the database user, you're going to be inputting a username and you're going to be inputting a password. So that's basically it for that. Just hit save on that and then click choose a connection method. On the connection method, we're going to be using the connect your application, so hit that, and let's just leave this page empty for now. Let's actually open our code, and in the terminal we're going to be installing something called mongoose that is going to be allowing us to connect to our MongoDB database from the JavaScript code. So type in npm and then I for install, and then mongoose, hit enter. There we should see we got mongoose installed. Now actually let's create a new file that we call for database.js. In here let's require mongoose, so const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. Now let's create a module.exports, so module.exports is equal to a arrow function. Open that up. Now let's type in mongoose.connect, put in a string, and then after the string we're going to be putting in some JSON data. In the JSON data here we want to put in use new URL parser as true, then the use unified topology also as true, and then use find and modify we're going to be putting as false. Now in the string here we want to go into our search engine again and then copy the string we have here. Now paste that in, and then you see my username on the user is suffix. Then after the colon here we have a less than symbol, we have password, and then we have a greater than. Totally remove that and then put in your password. So my password is 1234 password. Then over at the .NET slash here. After this slash, you should see my first database. Remove that and put in data, as that's gonna be our database name. And that's basically it for that. So let's just create a .then statement, .then, and then like that, and then let's console.log connected to the database. Now let's go into the index.js, and now let's require that. So require /database. Now let's run that. So put some parentheses behind there, and now we can actually run the code. So let me clear it. Now node space dot, and you should see connected to the database, and the bot is online. So that worked flawlessly. Now I'm gonna be getting back to you, and we're gonna be just going over some basic MongoDB functions. So let's say finding information from the database, and also saving information, and just stuff like that. So yeah, I'll see you soon. Okay, so now we have connected to the database, and we'll be soon moving on to saving information, sending that information back to the user, and also deleting some information from the database. Now you might also see I've changed the password to a variable, the config.password here. I moved it into the config.json, as of course the password should be secret, and therefore I've moved it into the config.json. So if you're copying this straight up from GitHub, make sure to make a password element in the config.json and put your password in there. But without further ado, let's go into saving information and all of that stuff. So the first thing we're going to need is a schema. Now a schema is basically just a template for how you want to save the information to the database. So for that, we're going to make a new folder, and we're going to call that for models. In the models folder, we're going to create all our schemas. Now for this schema, we're just going to be calling it for test.js. Now in here, we want to require the mongoose library. So const mongoose is equal to require mongoose. There we go. And now we actually want to make basically some JSON data that is the format of the way you want to save it. So const format is equal to a object, and in here we want to put in the data. So for example, a name. Now of course this is up to you what you want to put in here, but I'm just giving this as an example. The name is a string, and then we want to put in a age as a, let's say, or not let's say, but the age is of course going to be a number. Now let's say, for example, is over, or we can actually just say is 18. And this is going to be a boolean. Now a boolean is basically just a false or true value, so it has two options, a false or true. Now that's basically it for the format. Now let's make a module that exports that sends this, so we can require this file in other files. So module.exports is equal to mongoose.model, and then let's put some parentheses. Now the name of the schema in the database, and that's, let's say, call it for test. Now by default, MongoDB is going to be putting a S right there. Just to fix that, we first got to put in the format, of course. Now if you have it like this, the name would be tests, but to fix that we just put another comma here and put in the name again. That basically tells MongoDB we want to have the name as test and not tests. Now put a semicolon there, and you can actually start with some saving and reading information. Now go into here and create a new folder, and let's call this for database. And in the database we want to make a new file that we call for test.js. Now let's go into the index.js. Now of course this whole video isn't any stuff you need to do. Of course you need to log in and stuff, but this section of the video isn't something you need to do, as I'm just showing you guys how to do stuff. So in the ready event, let's require the file we just made. So ./database/test, and let's run that as a function. There we go. Now in here, let's make a module.export is equal to async, and that's just going to be anonymous arrow function. Now in here, let's require the schema. So const db for a database is going to be require // models/test. Now the way we create a object to the database is really simple. Actually, we just use new and then the variable we required that, so new db, and then we want to open it with some parentheses and some curly braces to make it a JSON, so we can put in JSON data. Now the stuff we put in was a name, and let's set the name as John. The age is gonna be 17, and therefore is over 18. Is gonna be, or did I put it as is over 18? No, just is 18. So the is 18 is then gonna be false as the person is 17. And then we need to use the .save function, and that just saves it. So now if we try to open a new terminal and use node space dot, we have connected to the database and we've also saved this to the database. So now let's go into our database and then click collections. Let this load, and here we should see a object, and the object is named John, age 17, and is over is 18 is false. And this is all the information we put in here. Now let's just comment this out. Now of course you can use this to whatever you want. You can create objects as you want, but you need to follow the schema. Now let's try to read this information back and log it to the console. So the way you do that is we use the db, and then we have two options. We can use the .find, which basically finds every single object that meets the condition, or we can use find one, which returns only one object that meets the condition. Now we're gonna use the find one for this video. Now just put in a object here, or some curly braces, and that allows us to put in conditions. So we want only people that is 18 as false, so we don't want any 18-year-olds, and we also want only people that is named John. Now this takes into parameters the error and the res for results. You can also put in data if you want. Now in here we can just simply do console.log res, and that should return it. Now let's put in a wait, and let's see what happens if we run this node space dot. As you see, we get the information back. Now let's test something. What if we change the name to Rick? Now of course in the database we don't have any objects with the name Rick, so if we now node space dot, we should only see null, as we have no result. Now the way we can do this is we can do, for example, if res, then we console.log the res, else we console.log no res. So now if we node space dot, we see no res as we have no result. Now let's check. Now let's change this back to John, and let's just comment this out, and we'll be moving on to deleting. Now to delete something from the database is really simple. We just use the await. Now make sure you use await, unless you don't, it's not gonna work. And then we use of course the db, and then .delete one or delete many. Delete many works the same as .find. It deletes every single object that meets the requirement or the condition. But to delete one, as we're gonna use, only deletes one object that meets the condition. Now put some parentheses there and some curly braces. Now of course we want only to delete the people that is 18, so or isn't 18, so of course false. And this does not take any parameters, so we can just leave it as it is. Now node space dot, we shouldn't see anything in the console, But if we go into the database and we click the refresh, we should see no results as we deleted the only object we had. Now let's say we just comment this out, so go behind here, do that. Now if we remove this again and let's say we node space dot again. There we go. Now if we refresh, we have created a new one, as we see. So yeah, that's basically just some simple MongoDB. You can of course take this into more advanced systems, and we are gonna do that in our Discord bot. We're gonna make, let's say, warn systems, automatic warn systems. So the word filter we made last video, we're gonna basically improve that. And yeah, mute systems, there's a lot to do with the MongoDB and databases. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any issues, feel free to join our Discord and we'll be happy to help you.